You never see it coming until it's too late. One moment, they're by your side, smiling, nodding, acting as if nothing has changed. But something has. You can feel it. The way they hesitate before speaking, the way their words feel, calculated. A forced laugh, a sudden distance. You brush it off until the betrayal hits, sharp as a blade, leaving you gasping for answers. What if you could have seen it before it happened? Betrayal is never spontaneous. It is crafted in whispers, built in shadows, woven into small, almost invisible shifts in behavior. The mistake most people make is believing that loyalty is forever. But the Stoics knew better. Seneca warned, "A wise man prepares for treachery, for he knows it often comes disguised as friendship." Today, you will learn to see what others miss, to detect the warning signs before the knife is drawn, to stand unshaken when betrayal strikes, because it will strike. The only question is, will you be ready? By the end of this, you won't just understand betrayal, you will master it. And when the moment comes, you won't be the one who's blindsided. Let's begin. 1. The silent alarms. How betrayal begins before it happens. Betrayal doesn't arrive like a sudden storm. It doesn't come with a loud announcement or a dramatic confrontation. Instead, it unfolds slowly, silently, creeping into your life in whispers and subtle shifts. Before the knife is plunged, before the deception is revealed, before the trust is shattered, there are always signs. The only question is, will you notice them in time? Most people don't. They overlook the quiet changes in behavior, dismiss the small inconsistencies in words and actions, and ignore the gut feeling that something is wrong. Not because they are naive, but because they trust too easily, assuming that loyalty, once given, will last forever. But Marcus Aurelius warned us, look beneath the surface, never let the appearance dictate the truth. The Stoics understood that the world is not always as it seems, and that those closest to us can change without warning. To navigate life unscathed by betrayal, you must learn to see beyond the illusion, to recognize the silent alarms before they become a deafening wake-up call. Betrayal begins long before the act itself. It starts in the mind of the betrayer, in doubts, in hidden resentment, in quiet justifications. A friend who once confided in you suddenly becomes distant. A colleague who used to be supportive now seems cold, detached. Someone who once valued your presence now seems indifferent, avoiding eye contact, replying to your messages with vague, half-hearted responses. You tell yourself it's nothing, you don't want to overthink. But the truth is, when someone begins to betray you, they first disconnect from you. Pay attention to the small things, the way they hesitate before answering your questions, the way their words feel rehearsed rather than spontaneous, the moments where laughter feels forced, where kindness seems calculated. Betrayal doesn't happen in an instant. It's built in these small moments of withdrawal, in the growing distance that you can't quite explain. The mistake most people make is brushing off these signs as mood swings, stress, or coincidence. But a Stoic knows better. Everything means something. The first red flag is emotional distancing. It doesn't happen overnight, but when it does, you'll feel it. A friend who once shared their struggles with you suddenly stops confiding. A partner who used to light up when you entered the room now barely acknowledges you. A co-worker who once sought your advice now avoids engaging in conversation. They are mentally checking out, because their mind is elsewhere, perhaps in planning their departure, in aligning with someone else, or in justifying the betrayal that is yet to come. The second warning sign is inconsistency between words and actions. Someone who used to be honest and direct with you now speaks in vague, evasive statements. They say they support you, but their actions show otherwise. They promise loyalty but hesitate when given the chance to prove it. Watch for the contradiction. When their words no longer match their behavior, deception is not far behind. Then there is the testing phase. Betrayers rarely act without testing the waters first. They might say something provocative to gauge your reaction. They might drop subtle hints to see if you suspect anything. They might put you in situations where you unknowingly reveal information they can later use against you. This is where many people fail to see the betrayal forming. They think it's just a strange conversation, just a harmless joke, just a misunderstanding. But nothing is ever just anything. The moment someone begins to test your responses, they are already considering betrayal. A less obvious sign is changes in body language. The eyes don't lie. When people lie, when they feel guilt, when they harbor unspoken resentment, their body reacts before their words do. Their eye contact becomes fleeting, their posture stiffens, their gestures become unnatural. They either avoid looking at you altogether or overcompensate with exaggerated friendliness. A smile that doesn't reach the eyes, a handshake that feels weaker than before, a laugh that seems too rehearsed. These are not meaningless details. They are silent alarms. So, what do you do when you start noticing these signs? First, do not react emotionally. The biggest mistake people make when they sense betrayal is confronting it too soon, too emotionally. A Stoic does not panic. A Stoic does not let suspicion cloud their judgment. Instead, they observe without reacting. Second, gather evidence. Pay closer attention. Keep track of inconsistencies. Notice patterns in behavior. Betrayal, like all things, follows a rhythm, a predictable sequence of distancing, deception, and execution. If you can see the pattern forming, you can predict the moment of the strike. Third, prepare yourself mentally. Epictetus taught that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The thought of betrayal often hurts more than the act itself. If you prepare for the possibility, if you accept that betrayal is a reality of life, you remove its power over you. You cannot control whether someone betrays you, but you can control how much it affects you. Finally, do not ignore your instincts. The ancient Stoics believed in the power of reason, but they also understood the wisdom of intuition. If something feels off, there is a reason. If someone's behavior shifts, it is not random. The biggest regrets people have after experiencing betrayal are not the actions of the betrayer, but the fact that they ignored the signs. So now, you must ask yourself, who in your life has changed? Who has begun to act differently around you? Who has become distant, inconsistent, or overly calculated? Maybe it's nothing, but maybe, just maybe, it's the silent beginning of a storm you have yet to see, and this time, you won't be caught off guard. 2. The psychology of betrayal. Why people turn against you. Betrayal doesn't just happen. It is never random. It begins long before the moment of the final act, brewing silently in the mind of the betrayer, taking shape through thoughts, rationalizations, and emotions that they themselves may not fully understand. No one betrays without a reason, no matter how irrational or selfish that reason may be. Understanding these reasons is what separates those who are blindsided from those who walk away unshaken. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that betrayal is not a reflection of the betrayed. It is a manifestation of the betrayer's own weaknesses, fears, and shifting desires. Epictetus once said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by their opinions about things." What causes someone to betray is not an objective reality, but their perception of their own circumstances. And those perceptions, whether based in truth or delusion, drive them to turn against you. Sometimes, betrayal is purely transactional. It happens because you no longer serve a purpose to someone, or they find a better opportunity elsewhere. This type of betrayal is not emotional. It is cold, calculated, and pragmatic. A friend who distances themselves when they find new social circles, a business partner who moves on the moment a better deal comes along, a colleague who supports you until you become their competition. They do not hate you, they do not necessarily wish you harm, but their priorities have shifted and you are no longer aligned with their best interests. Their betrayal is not personal, it is simply the logical outcome of their self-interest. The world is filled with people who will remain loyal only as long as it benefits them. And when that benefit disappears, so does their loyalty. The mistake most people make is assuming that loyalty is absolute, that a bond built over years cannot be undone by a moment of opportunity. But the truth is, for many, loyalty is conditional. It lasts only as long as it is convenient. Others betray not out of logic, but out of emotion. Their betrayal is rooted in something deeper, something personal, something they cannot admit even to themselves. These are the ones who betray not because you have failed them, but because your success, your presence, your very existence makes them feel inadequate. Envy is one of the most dangerous emotions because it does not need a logical justification. It grows silently, often in the people you least expect. It is the friend who once admired you but now resents you for surpassing them. The colleague who once supported you but now feels overshadowed by your achievements. The family member who once celebrated you but now feels they will never escape your shadow. Their betrayal does not come from hatred. It comes from comparison. They see your victories as their failures, your confidence as their insecurity, your growth as a reminder of their stagnation. And so they turn against you, not because you did anything wrong, but because they cannot stand being in your presence without feeling small. They smile in front of you, but hope for your downfall in private. They pretend to support you, but secretly celebrate when you struggle. Their betrayal is slow, quiet, and often disguised as concern. I just want to make sure you don't get too arrogant. I think you should be careful. People are talking. I hate to say this, but the truth is, they don't hate to say it. They relish in the moment of planting doubt, of making you question yourself, of subtly bringing you down without ever being obvious. Envy is rarely loud, but it is always lethal. Then there are those who betray not out of greed or jealousy, but out of fear. Their betrayal is not calculated, nor is it emotional. It is reactive. It is the kind of betrayal that happens in moments of crisis when people feel their survival is at stake. Fear makes people abandon their values, turn on their friends, and choose self-preservation over loyalty. History is filled with stories of people who, when faced with a difficult choice, chose betrayal simply because it was the safest option. A friend who distances themselves from you when you become controversial. A colleague who refuses to defend you when you are unfairly attacked. A confidant who suddenly forgets their promises when standing by you becomes risky. They do not betray because they want to hurt you. They betray because they are protecting themselves. But in the end, does it really matter why? The result is the same. A Stoic does not expect the world to be different than it is. A Stoic does not lament that people act in their own self-interest, that they become envious, or that they choose fear over courage. Instead, a Stoic understands these forces, anticipates them, and remains unshaken when they occur. If someone betrays you because they found a better opportunity, let them go. If someone turns against you out of envy, understand that their resentment is about them, not you. If someone abandons you out of fear, know that they never had the strength to stand with you in the first place. None of these betrayals define you. They define the betrayer. And once you recognize this, betrayal loses its power. But knowledge is not enough. You must apply it. Who around you has started acting differently? Who hesitates before celebrating your success? Who distances themselves when you face difficulty? The signs are always there. The only question is whether you are willing to see them before it's too late. 3. The 3 types of betrayers and how they operate. Betrayal is not a one-size-fits-all phenomenon. Some betray out of necessity, others out of resentment, and some betray simply because they were never truly loyal to begin with. While the pain of betrayal often feels personal, the truth is, betrayers are acting according to their own nature, following patterns that have repeated throughout history. If you understand these patterns, you will never be caught off guard. Not all betrayers operate in the same way. Some are blatant opportunists, some are masked by false friendship, and others are patiently waiting for their moment to strike. The worst mistake you can make is assuming that just because someone has not betrayed you yet, they never will. The question is not if betrayal will happen, but who will do it and when. Some betray because it benefits them. They do not betray out of hate, nor do they feel guilt. Their actions are dictated by self-interest, and their loyalty is conditional. If you are useful to them, they will remain on your side. But the moment a better opportunity arises, they will abandon you without hesitation. The opportunist does not wear the mask of friendship because they care about you. They wear it because it serves them. You see this in business, in politics, and in personal relationships. A business partner who works with you only until they get a better deal. A friend who remains close only as long as you provide them with something they need. A colleague who praises you until you become competition. Their allegiance is never to a person, only to what they can gain. The opportunist's betrayal is predictable, yet many fail to recognize it because they believe in sentiment over logic. They assume that past loyalty guarantees future loyalty. But loyalty, for an opportunist, is nothing more than a temporary convenience. Their nature is transactional. If you study history, you'll see this pattern repeatedly. One of the most infamous betrayals of all time, Benedict Arnold's defection during the American Revolutionary War, was not fueled by hatred of his country, but by a feeling of underappreciation and the promise of wealth and power. He switched sides, not because he despised the revolution, but because he saw a better future for himself elsewhere. If you expect loyalty from an opportunist, you are setting yourself up for disappointment. Others betray not for personal gain, but because they cannot stand to see you rise above them. These are the ones who smile in your face but resent you in silence. They watch your success with admiration at first, but admiration slowly turns to bitterness. They begin to see your victories as their failures, your confidence as a reminder of their insecurities. They are not driven by logic, but by emotion, by an internal war that has nothing to do with you, yet everything to do with how they see themselves. At first, their envy is subtle, a joke that cuts deeper than it should, a piece of advice that sounds more like a warning, a moment of hesitation before celebrating your accomplishments. But over time, the resentment grows. They start to talk about you behind your back. They undermine your reputation in ways that are hard to trace. They position themselves so that when you fall, they will be the ones people turn to. The envious friend is the most deceptive because they do not start as your enemy. They are close to you, sometimes for years. They might even care about you on some level. But envy is a disease that festers in silence. The most famous example in history is Brutus, the man who helped orchestrate the assassination of Julius Caesar. Caesar trusted him. He treated him like a son. Yet, as Caesar's power grew, so did Brutus' resentment. He could no longer stand living in the shadow of a man greater than himself. His betrayal was not because of anything Caesar did wrong, but because Brutus could not handle what Caesar had become. The envious friend rarely betrays in an obvious way. They do not attack you head-on. Instead, they wait for cracks to form, and when they see an opportunity to strike without exposing themselves, they take it. And then there is the most dangerous betrayer of all. They do not act impulsively. They do not betray out of immediate self-interest or fleeting envy. Instead, they play the long game. They wait, they watch, and they learn your every move. They gain your trust, not for temporary benefit, but so that when they strike, you will never recover. The silent enemy is the person who remains close, not because they love you, but because they are studying you. They listen to your weaknesses, your fears, your vulnerabilities, not to support you, but to gather information that can one day be used against you. They know that a betrayal done too soon will not have the full effect. And so, they wait, patiently, methodically, until the perfect moment presents itself. This type of betrayal is the hardest to detect because the silent enemy does not operate out of emotion or impulse. They are strategic. They appear trustworthy. They may even defend you publicly just to reinforce the illusion of loyalty. But deep down, they have already made their decision. They are simply waiting for the conditions to align. Throughout history, some of the most devastating betrayals have come from those who waited in the shadows. The advisor who whispers in the king's ear while plotting his downfall, the soldier who remains loyal until the final battle, then turns at the crucial moment, the friend who waits until you are most vulnerable before delivering the final blow. The Stoics understood that true loyalty is rare, and that many will pretend to be on your side until it is in their best interest to be against you. Marcus Aurelius, a man who spent his life surrounded by politicians, generals, and supposed allies, knew that loyalty could not be assumed. It had to be tested. One of his strategies was to present minor opportunities for betrayal to those around him, observing who would take them. Those who did, even in the smallest ways, revealed their nature. If someone will betray you in something small, it is only a matter of time before they betray you in something greater. If you want to avoid being blindsided, you must learn to test loyalty before it is too late. Give people small moments where they could choose to turn against you. Observe who remains true even when it is inconvenient. Pay attention to those who hesitate when they should support you. Betrayal is rarely about the final act. It is about the small moments that lead up to it. Those who will betray you in the future are already showing you signs in the present. Now, think about the people in your life. Who is always around but never truly happy for you? Who supports you only when there is something to gain? Who do you trust implicitly, yet deep down you feel something is off? The greatest mistake you can make is ignoring the feeling that someone is not what they seem. The signs are always there. The only question is, will you recognize them before it's too late? 4. How to read between the lines. Detecting betrayal before it strikes. Betrayal does not arrive as a sudden blow. It is not a lightning strike that catches you unaware. It is a slow, creeping storm that builds in whispers, subtle shifts, and unspoken tensions. The mistake most people make is believing that betrayal happens in an instant. But before someone turns against you, they leave traces, signs, warnings, if you know where to look. Most betrayals could have been prevented. The signs were always there, scattered in conversations, woven into gestures, hidden behind carefully crafted words. But people are often blinded by trust, hope, and denial. They dismiss small inconsistencies as misunderstandings, excuse strange behavior as stress, and ignore their gut instincts because they do not want to believe that someone close to them is capable of deception, and that is exactly why they become victims. The reality is that no one is ever truly betrayed without warning. The warnings just weren't taken seriously. The first sign of impending betrayal is inconsistency. When a person's words and actions no longer align, when what they say does not match how they behave, something is off. At first, it may seem minor, a shift in tone, a vague response, a moment of hesitation, but small contradictions grow into undeniable patterns. A friend who once confided in you suddenly becomes guarded. A colleague who used to be supportive now avoids giving you direct answers. Someone who once celebrated your victories now downplays them. These inconsistencies are not random, they are signals. People who are planning betrayal often struggle with their dual intentions. They want to maintain the facade while simultaneously preparing their exit. Their words try to reassure, but their actions begin to drift. The more contradictions you notice, the closer betrayal is. Another warning sign is when someone begins to show an unusual interest in your weaknesses. They ask about your vulnerabilities, not out of concern, but out of curiosity. They probe into your fears, your insecurities, your biggest regrets. They frame their questions as care, as concern, as harmless conversation, but their true intention is to gather information. The ones who betray you often do so at your most vulnerable moment, using the very things you once shared with them. If someone suddenly seems more invested in understanding your struggles rather than celebrating your strengths, be cautious. A true friend supports, but a potential betrayer collects ammunition. Then there are the conversations that don't involve you directly, but are happening about you. Betrayal rarely begins with action, it begins with discussion. Before someone turns against you, they test the waters. They speak about you in different circles. They gauge reactions. They plant seeds of doubt. It starts with subtle phrases. "I don't know if they're as trustworthy as they seem. They've changed a lot recently. I used to believe in them, but now I'm not so sure." These statements are not random, they are deliberate tests. A betrayer does not move alone. They seek validation, agreement, and silent approval from others before they strike. If you start hearing that your name is coming up in conversations that don't make sense, that people are questioning you in ways they never did before, betrayal is forming beneath the surface. Beyond words, the body reveals more than the mouth ever will. The eyes hesitate. The smile lingers a fraction too long or disappears too quickly. A handshake that once felt firm is now weak. The posture that once faced you with openness now turns slightly away. The person who once looked at you with warmth now avoids your gaze. The betrayer's body reacts before their mind catches up, because deception requires effort. And even the most skilled manipulators struggle to maintain complete control over their subconscious movements. They may still try to act as though nothing has changed, but their body betrays them before they betray you. Stoics understood this well. Epictetus taught, "First learn to observe, then learn to act." To see betrayal before it arrives, you must become a master of observation. People say what they want you to believe, but they act on what they truly think. And then there is the final clue, the presence of artificial harmony. When someone becomes too nice, too agreeable, too strategic in their words, it is often a red flag. A person who is about to betray you sometimes overcompensates with excessive kindness. They want you to lower your guard. They offer empty compliments, forced enthusiasm, and vague reassurances. It is an act, a well-rehearsed performance to keep you from questioning their loyalty until it is too late. When someone suddenly goes out of their way to be overly supportive, when their words start feeling unnatural, when their laughter seems staged rather than genuine, ask yourself, why the sudden shift? True loyalty does not require exaggeration. If something feels fake, it probably is. Once you recognize these signs, the next question is, what do you do? A common mistake is confrontation. People assume that when they detect betrayal forming, they must immediately call it out. But this is a reactive move, not a strategic one. Betrayal is a game of patience, and those who win are the ones who do not act emotionally, but intelligently. Instead of confronting, observe. Instead of reacting, collect information. Betrayal, once detected, is a weapon that can be turned back on the betrayer. One of the most powerful techniques is to feed controlled information to someone you suspect of disloyalty. Give them a small, insignificant piece of false information and see where it surfaces. If it comes back to you from another source, you have confirmation. Marcus Aurelius used a similar tactic in his inner circle. He would mention different minor secrets to different people and see which ones leaked. The ones who spread them revealed themselves. When you suspect betrayal, do not expose yourself. Expose them. Another strategy is detachment. Betrayers expect emotional reactions. They anticipate shock, anger, and disappointment. What they do not expect is indifference. When someone realizes you are calm, unshaken, and unbothered by their actions, they lose power. The Stoic approach to betrayal is simple. Accept it as an inevitability of human nature and move accordingly. People will act as they will. You cannot change their nature, but you can control how much of yourself you give to them. Betrayal is only devastating if it catches you off guard. If you have already prepared for it, it becomes nothing more than another moment in life's cycle. So now, you have a choice. Will you continue to assume loyalty without proof? Or will you start paying attention? Who in your life has started acting differently? Who speaks in vague reassurances but behaves with hesitation? Who is too eager, too perfect, too rehearsed? Who asks too much about your weaknesses but too little about your strengths? The signs are always there. The question is, will you read them before the betrayal happens, or only after it's too late? 5. The Stoic way to handle betrayal and remain unshaken. Betrayal is a certainty of life. It is not a question of if, but when. It will come from places you least expect, from those you trusted, from those who once swore loyalty. And yet most people remain unprepared. They react with shock, anger, devastation, allowing the betrayal to consume them. But if betrayal is inevitable, then the only real power you have is in your response. That is where the Stoics thrived. They understood that betrayal is not a reflection of you, it is a revelation of the betrayer. And once you grasp this truth, you become untouchable. Most people allow betrayal to destroy them, not because of the act itself, but because of their expectations. They assumed loyalty was permanent. They assumed certain people would always stand by them, and when reality shattered those illusions, they fell apart. But what if you could see betrayal for what it truly is? Not an attack, not an injustice, but simply another test of your discipline and your strength. The Stoics never wished for a world without betrayal. They knew such a world could not exist. Instead, they trained their minds to remain unshaken when it happened. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." The pain of betrayal is not in the event itself. It is in the way we mentally amplify it. When you stop seeing betrayal as a catastrophe and start seeing it as information, it loses its power over you. The first rule of handling betrayal the Stoic way is to not react emotionally. The moment you respond with rage, sadness, or desperation, you have handed the betrayer control. They wanted a reaction. They wanted to disrupt your inner peace. And if you give them that satisfaction, they win. A Stoic does not allow their emotions to be dictated by the actions of others. Instead, they observe, they analyze, and they decide their next move with complete clarity. The first and greatest victory over betrayal is indifference, not in the sense of pretending it did not happen, but in the sense of not allowing it to alter your emotional state. The second rule is to resist the urge for revenge. Most people, when betrayed, feel an immediate pull toward retaliation. They want to expose the traitor, to make them suffer, to restore balance through vengeance. But revenge does not restore balance. It only extends the cycle of destruction. Marcus Aurelius advised, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." When you respond to betrayal with anger and retribution, you are no longer in control. You are being controlled by the very person who wronged you. A Stoic does not seek to destroy their enemies. They simply remove them from their lives and move forward without looking back. Betrayal, if approached correctly, is the greatest filter for who truly deserves a place in your life. It is not a loss. It is a revelation. It exposes the weak, it clarifies intentions, and it forces you to refine your inner circle. Imagine if you could know, right now, who in your life would turn against you if given the chance. Betrayal grants you that knowledge painful as it may be. Instead of lamenting the loss of a false ally, see it as a blessing. You are now free from an illusion. You are no longer investing in someone who was never truly with you. You have cut dead weight without having to lift a finger. The Stoic response to betrayal is not to grieve over the traitor. It is to be grateful that their true nature has been exposed before they could cause even greater harm. The next step is to fortify yourself against future betrayals. This does not mean becoming paranoid or distrusting everyone. It means training yourself to see people as they are, not as you wish they were. Most betrayals happen not because the signs were absent, but because they were ignored. Pay attention to patterns, not promises. Watch what people do, not what they say. A person who will betray you in a small matter today will betray you in a greater one tomorrow. A Stoic expects betrayal, prepares for it, and is never caught off guard. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of Stoicism is the ability to remain at peace no matter what happens. Betrayal cannot break you if you do not allow it to. If you have built your inner world correctly, no external event, no matter how painful, can shake it. Seneca wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." The pain of betrayal is temporary, but your strength, if cultivated correctly, is eternal. Now, take a moment. Think about the betrayals you have faced. Did they not, in the end, lead you to something greater? Did they not reveal the truth about someone you were better off without? Did they not force you to become sharper, wiser, more resilient? In that case, were they really losses, or were they simply necessary lessons disguised as pain? You cannot prevent betrayal, but you can control whether it weakens you or makes you indestructible, and that choice is entirely yours. Betrayal is inevitable. It has shaped empires, destroyed friendships, and rewritten the course of history. No one escapes it, but not everyone is destroyed by it. The difference lies in how you respond. You can let it consume you, allowing anger, resentment, and disappointment to dictate your actions. Or you can see it for what it truly is, a test of your discipline, a revelation of hidden truths, a moment that sharpens your perception and strengthens your resolve. The Stoics never sought to eliminate betrayal because they understood one fundamental truth. You cannot control what others do. You can only control how much power you give their actions over you. If you expect betrayal, you will never be surprised. If you prepare for it, you will never be broken by it. And if you learn from it, you will never fall victim to it again. The only betrayal that truly destroys a person is the one they refuse to learn from. Now, here is your challenge. In the next 7 days, observe. Pay attention to the people around you. Who has changed? Who hesitates when they once spoke freely? Who avoids your gaze, dodges your questions, or suddenly takes a keen interest in your vulnerabilities? The signs are always there. You just have to see them. And now I ask you, have you ever been betrayed? Looking back, were the signs already there? Share your story in the comments below. The best way to protect yourself is to learn from the experiences of others. Let's create a conversation that helps us all sharpen our awareness. If you found this valuable, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe so more people can equip themselves with this knowledge. Betrayal is a part of life, but suffering from it is a choice. Stay strong, stay aware, stay unshaken.